Hi everyone, welcome to CoachMe. I'm Vic Sorrell, one of your hosts for today.
And I'm Candice Rooney, and I'm joining you from Austin, Texas.
Hi everyone, I'm Dez Stephens, and I'm so honored to say that today we have Teri Pugh with us. She's a professional coach. She holds a PhD in holistic life coaching. She has a private practice in Nashville. We're so happy to have her here. Welcome, welcome, Teri.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be sharing time and space with you guys today.
It's good to see you, as always. With Coach Me, we want to try to give people an idea about what coaching actually is, because it's something that you hear people talk about a lot, and yet it seems like maybe when people talk about coaching, they're not necessarily talking about the same thing, and maybe coaching experiences vary from coach to coach. So that's why we wanted to get a pro like yourself to help us out and sort of just dive in and give people an idea of how this all works. So to start, something I've never asked you before, even though we've known each other a few minutes, is do you remember where you were when you had that realization of I'm a coach, or coaching is for me, or this path is where I'm headed?
Exact realization, not off the top of my head, but I do know that for years, and I mean years, I felt the gentle calling of sorts to be coaching. And many of us were coaching before we ever really recognized that we're coaching, because I subscribe to the belief that it is truly it's a purpose that's within us. And, so the exact moment, no, but I do recall having a long-term, full-time 9-to-5 and knowing that I was going to be fully supported in making this choice to coach.
You made an interesting statement about coaching when you didn't realize you were coaching. What did that look like?
Oh, honey, that is people catching you on the elevator. And it's just, let me be more exact with my words. I believe that it is a level of comfort that people have with you when they don't even know you. There's just an energy there, a knowing, a light, whatever the words are that we want to use for it. There's a space that we provide for folks, and you can be on an elevator, and then just, hey, how's your day going? Great. And the 12th floor opens up, and suddenly, their life, and you've given them a few pointers and tools to help them navigate whatever wave is coming next, and this can start for folks as early as high school, or it can start as recent as last week. When you know, kind of thing.
Thank you, Teri. You also mentioned that this coaching is like your purpose. Can you define in maybe one sentence what that purpose is for you?
I start with most clients by being very transparent and telling them that I did not choose this path, it chose me. And my purpose is to support not only myself in attaining my goals and my alignment with self, but also supporting clients in attaining whatever their goals and their visions are. If it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, being there to help them stock their wheelhouse. So I guess in short, my purpose is to support,
Absolutely. It seems like in helping others, you're also helping yourself, and that's like the overall purpose.
We can't not evolve when we're helping other people as well.
Absolutely. I agree. Thanks, Teri. What sets you apart from other coaches?
Well, I would like to say that there's some groundbreaking thing that sets me apart. I am a grief and loss specialist, so that would be one of the external things that set me apart. But I think internally we all have the same desire or drive. So we're all a thread in this tapestry of coaching. but for me personally, it would be the extensive work that I have done professionally and personally around navigating grief and loss and recreating new narratives and dissolving old patterns and belief systems.
Teri, you said something a second ago I'd just like to circle back to really quickly. You said something about you help your clients stop their wheelhouse?
Stock their wheelhouse.
Stock their wheelhouse. Oh, okay. I was like, because, I immediately got the vision of how we tend to maybe spiral sometimes and not always in the most constructive of directions. Because I'm sure that probably comes into play every now and then.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But stock
Teri,
their
I
wheelhouse.
know it's pretty extraordinary.
That's, I think, especially in the season that we're living in now, I think.
Can
Go ahead.
you describe to us that empathy, that empathetic place you come from? Like you said, you have an experience with grief yourself and you do grief recovery work with others. I know you have a private practice. I know you do work in prisons. I know this comes from a very personal place. Can you let our audience know, what is it like? What does it look like to be a coach? A day in the life of Teri Pugh as a professional life coach.
Well, a day in the life is getting up and starting with my own grounding, my own self-care. No matter how rushed we may tend to be in the world, I start with my own grounding, my own self-care. And a day in the life is really, I find this work incredibly energizing, where most people will say, oh my gosh, like you deal with grief and loss all the time. That has to be draining. And I'm like, no, there are amazing gifts and nuggets of wisdom within all of our loss and within our grief. If we're willing to get cozy with it and acknowledge it and allow it to be a part of our life rather than resist it, like society, no slam on society, but our society has kind of conditioned us until recent years that we just stay busy, we eat something, we feel better, just kind of keep it at arm's length. But we can't really evolve unless we embrace that grief and feel what it is that we are destined to feel with it.
How do you define grief?
Well, for me, it is a simple. Grief is, loss is what we experience. Grief is the physical sensation to that loss experience. Now, there's a lot of people that have a lot of different words for it and different ways, more eloquent ways to describe it, but it really is a loss, and it's the physical sensations that come from that loss.
Would you say that that's one of the most common things that your clients are experiencing, is their relationship to loss, or is it something else?
I think it's most definitely the relationship to loss. And we don't know what to do with the grief when it comes, because loss can be a physical loss. It can be a spiritual loss. It can be emotional losses. We have relationships that end, we lose jobs, we retire, we lose homes. This season of this pandemic has brought up loss of finances, loss of security, even, our mental and our emotional states of loss, trust and security and betrayal. And all of those are losses. We can give them all sorts of different names, but at the end of the day, it's a loss. And so there are going to be grievances within ourselves about how we adjust to that. Most people do tend to think of grief. When I say, a grief and loss, coach, they'll say, oh, well, I haven't had anybody die in years, and the truth of it is, we all, if we're not doing our own growth, we're dying a little bit every day. So we're losing a little bit of ourselves every day. And so my role in this is to help people rally the troops and,
Yeah. And when you get that sensation when you're sitting down with somebody and you feel like they are experiencing so much grief and have no conscious idea whatsoever, what are some of the things that you ask them in order to try to get at that or help them connect it?
Well, I'll start off sometimes with just, where are you at right now emotionally? Where are you at right now physically? We'll do a scan of the body. Where are you heavy at? Where are you feeling? A lot of people will come to me and they'll say, I'm just stuck. Just stuck. And I'm like, is your heart beating? Yes. Okay. Well, then there's movement. So you're not stuck. It's just a really heavy place you're in. The veil or the fog is incredibly dense right now. And to recognize how you feel in that moment, and to also trust that you're not going to be there forever. It is going to lift and shift, but it's not my job, nor is it anyone else's job to rush someone through that process. Because if we're rushing them through the process, then they're not, it's likely that they're not getting everything that their personal journey was to teach them in that.
So we have, go ahead.
Okay, Teri, what is one of the biggest changes you've seen in coaching someone through grief?
The biggest changes I've seen in myself, or the biggest changes I've seen in a client?
In the client.
I have seen clients go from, and I can share this because this is not confidential. They've shared it with me and they've actually shared it on social media. I've seen clients go from having a plan, a letter, and an execution strategy, coming in to see me to work with me about their grief and their loss, and then later sharing with me that they intended to end their life and did not because of anything I had done, but because they were able in that session to connect to something, to connect a dot, to shift that grief. And now they are actually an adult college graduate and thriving and in a wonderful relationship. And my heart just explodes a little bit every time I think about that.
And
that's amazing.
You made such an interesting, you said shift the grief. So what is that? Like when you're able to support somebody as they shift their grief, what's the shift that is happening?
Well, we hear oftentimes the language of, how many times have we heard, well, I've got to deal with it. I've got to work through it. I've got to manage it. I've got to control it. These are all very aggressive forms of dancing with our grief, right? And then rather than changing it, which in many of our minds, change represents it. There's a black and a white, and it's a very finite thing. And when you are in the belly of grief, someone telling you we're going to deal with it, it can feel for some people comforting, but for most people, what I hear is that is another layer of heaviness or an overwhelming sensation when someone is already maxed out in the level of being overwhelmed, that almost seems too impossible. So I talk with folks about shifting, because shifting means we're shuffling, we're scooting, we're swaying, we're baby stepping, and some people are running and leaping, but nonetheless, it's a shift.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. We have something we want to try.
Okay.
We want people to sort of have a glimpse of what it looks like for coaching to happen. So would you prefer to be coached, coach, or watch while coaching happens?
Ooh, I am game for whatever. Let's draw straws. I mean, whichever.
Yeah. Well, personally, I would love to see how you coach. Maybe like how you would start out a conversation with somebody, if you'd be willing, if that feels good to you.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to coach me?
Of course I will.
Okay, coach me.
So are you, you're just walking into my office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so if we were pre-COVID time, I would ask you if you were open to a hug, or if you're a hugger or a shaker. And most people will let you know if they're a hugger or a shaker. And then we would greet that way, energetically. Some people are neither, and that is honored as well. So if I had never worked with you.
If I said I was a kisser.
Depends on what kind.
Okay, so hugger.
Okay, hugger. So we're going to hug for a sec and really connect, right? Not like a long, creepy hug, but just a hug that says, hey, I'm here and this is a safe space. Okay. And then we would start the conversation off with me asking you, just to take a few deep breaths, and we're going to get grounded in the room. And then I explain to people before I work with them, when we do a brief consultation on the phone, that when I ask someone where they're at, that is my version of how are you doing. And so someone will say, well, I'm feeling anxious today, or I really dreaded coming in here today. That's oftentimes the lead that I get. And I say to them, well, I'm so happy that you chose to come. So Vic, what brings you in today?
Well, I've got several decisions in front of me to make. I'm not sure about the path that I'm currently going career-wise.
Okay.
I've just recently ended a relationship that lasted a year, a romantic relationship. And I just sort of feel like I'm facing this clean slate, but I'm really kind of afraid of what to do with it.
Okay. So tell me what does the fear feel like to you? What is it presenting? Obstacles, blocks, anxiety. So how does your anxiety present itself?
Well, I feel nervous a lot of the time, and I have a very short fuse. So any BS whatsoever, I have zero tolerance for. And to be quite honest, the people that are closest to me are getting the brunt of it. And I don't even mean for that to happen, but I'm just too quick all the time.
Okay. Have you been in a position where, first let me ask you this, when your fuse is short and those folks that are closest to you are taking the brunt, what is that leaving in you? How are you feeling from that?
Guilty, extremely guilty.
Okay. Have you been in a position where you can have a dialogue with these individuals about maybe not, if you're not comfortable sharing everything you're going through, but just sharing with them that you are processing some stuff and that you may be a bit more emotional, or you may have, your fuse may be shorter. You'll know the language that you're going to choose to work with them. Are you in a position where you can share this with folks so that you've set up a framework around, they're aware at least that you have a shorter fuse, so they can be a little more mindful about how to approach you, and then that lessens that guilt or whatever's going on the tail end of that?
I think that's, I've definitely tried talking. I think that what you say, what you offer adds a little more dimension to the conversations that I've had. One thing that's come up when I have tried to let people around me know that I'm processing a lot and I'm going through a lot is, well, okay, and how many times are you just going to keep asking for grace and nothing ever changes?
So that's where we have to set boundaries. Are you familiar with setting boundaries?
You mean like an invisible fence in my yard?
Well, first, what is your definition of a boundary?
A line that is meant not to be crossed.
Okay. And so how does that, when we talk boundaries, does it have a sensation of punitive to you, or is it like a forceful demanding, or what comes up for you with that?
Barrier, just divider.
Okay. So not all boundaries have to be black and white, and they also don't have to be a line drawn in the sand. Boundaries can be pliable depending on the person that you're working with. So the first thing with a boundary, if you are not familiar with setting them, would be to establish where you need a boundary set. And let's be real, most everyone in our life could use a boundary. We even need them sometimes ourselves, right? And they're not intended to, as I said earlier, have a punitive feeling to them. They're not a punishment. They're a way for us to self-care. And to be able to advocate for ourselves and speak what our needs are. And sometimes we set boundaries and they may feel prickly to other people. that's usually just an indication that we really did need a boundary set in that space.
I think that happened to me a lot growing up. Whenever I would instinctively try to enforce a boundary, I was resented for that. So I thought that there's negative consequence for boundaries to protect myself.
Right. And that's it. We fall in the, many times we can take on the notion that that boundary is there, and it is there for a sense of protection, but it is not there for self-preservation. Okay. A boundary is not a layer of armor to keep us locked in. It's a way to, it's very much like physical distancing. It's there to keep us safe when we are interacting with other people and we're navigating our path. Sometimes they get in our lane and we have to reinforce the boundary.
So it's more like an agreement.
It is definitely agreement. And here's one of the reasons why it's an agreement is because we actually share with the person that we're setting a boundary with, that we're setting a boundary and why we're setting it. We get from a place where emotionally we're secure in the sense of feeling safe with that person. There are going to be some people that are going to be very textured in your life, and it may be difficult to actually have a dialogue with them about why you need to set a boundary because they're just not going to hear it. I like that,
textured. Somebody's very textured in my life.
Yeah, we've all had textured people.
But I think I'm a textured person, actually.
I think we can all be from time to time. You know, that's the beauty of being human, is knowing that we have flaws and not running from them, but just going, yeah, you know.
I think the reason that I kind of pulled back, though, was because you were talking about telling someone that there's a boundary that's being set.
So looking at that and you doing a self-assessment about what's coming up there, is this person a genuine mental, physical, emotional, spiritual threat to you? Or is it just your level of dis-ease with advocating for yourself? If it's a person that, you know, they're going to lash back and be confrontational, then yes, there are ways to set your own boundaries and care for yourself without having to articulate that to the person. But like if you're dealing with a coworker, a child, a parent, a spouse, a partner, you know, and we have to set a boundary. It's only fair with those individuals that we can and we do share space and time with, that we explain to them why we need this, because otherwise we're coming at them out of left field and they're going, whoa, wait a minute. We never talked about this. We've had that conversation in our head, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not privy to that conversation. So that will create more conflict often.
Thank you. I can see why you say that you were coaching years before you realized you were coaching. So it flows from you so naturally.
Well, I'm honored to do this every day.
Yeah,
so
I can feel it.
Thanks for sharing that, Teri. We do have a question from Facebook about what is the general difference between counseling and coaching?
Counseling is going to be more diving in and looking at the counseling is kind of the past. Coaching is propelling someone into their future. Counseling is going to be definitely more of a mental health arena where they're many times diagnosing and prescribing. They have a larger scope with the deeper knowledge base. And so individuals will go to counselors or therapists for more of to say mental and emotional realignment and to work through. It is definitely more of what they call the talk therapy. And what I hear from I actually have a lot of clients who have done therapy and counseling over the years. And so they will oftentimes interchange the words because it's all the same to them, where coaching is about shifting narratives and meeting a client where they are and letting them share with you where it is they want to go not where we feel would be best for them to go, and then supporting them in that journey, you know, if that's job, relationship, self-care, whatever that is, holding them accountable and being an accountability partner of sorts.
Excellent. Thank you, Teri. That's a great.
You're welcome. You're
explanation.
welcome.
Accountability for the texture in your life.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. Texture. I'm going to take that one somewhere. I don't know where.
Texture. That came to me at my father's funeral. Because that's how I describe him. He was a very textured individual, you know, had great components, but also very textured. Kind of like one of those sponges. One side is soft and the other side is just bristly as all get out. So it's kind of like, you know, yeah.
I got you.
You feel me?
Oh, do I ever. Rubbing up against you right now. But
that's right. That's right.
You know, yeah.
But the really great thing about interacting with textured people is if we allow it, it's sort of like dancing with a loofah. And I know that may sound crazy, but it really does allow us to, as individuals, professional or folks who are looking for coaches, it allows us to kind of, you know, buff ourselves a little bit, and some old stuff is allowed to fall off, and that's great because that just allows and affords space for new, and that's what we're here for, right?
Yep. Just really quick, let me throw this in that Marianne Williamson said one time, and I love this, that we are like rocks in a rock tumbler brushing up against each other so that our rough edges become smooth and we over time become polished.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
So,
yeah, when you see especially relationship conflict in that way, that it's really just there so both people can become more polished and more, you know, shiny and precious, changes it.
It changes it, and that all starts with their ability to communicate effectively with one another, to learn the language that the other person speaks, because many of us, myself included, in relationships, you know, we enter relationships and at some point or another we become a bit guarded, and then we start interpreting our own language, and we're speaking almost a foreign language to our partners, you know, our husbands, wives, and then the conflict starts. So when we recognize, hey, you know, we're in this together, we're growing together, and I'm me and you're you, so let's communicate effectively with one another, and that some boundaries come in there. You know, here's what I need, here's what I hear you saying. Oh, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. Oh, great. So much conflict is resolved, and not to say avoided, but just it doesn't bloom. You know, it's just not there, because people are learning how to speak with authenticity and to show up in their life, and they take accountability, especially with coaching. They learn the skill set to take accountability for how they show up in life, what they bring to the table, what they take away from the table. And that, yes, while, you know, my clients hear this so much, and while things happen to us in the moment, they happen for us in the long run. If we're willing to look at the things that have happened, the experiences that we've had, and extract from that what empowers us and benefits us to continue moving forward, rather than becoming stuck in the underpinning of that weight, particularly with grief.
Wow.
I've been a coach a long time, and I love to talk to other coaches because I learned so much about the work you do. I'm just so honored that you're with us today.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you, Teri.
Thank you.
I think just one last thing that I'll say is, where can people find you?
I have, my website is teripugh.com, teripugh.com, and I am also on all the major social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and all that jazz. Under
Teri's texture tip.
Pardon?
Teri's texture tips.
Yeah. I'm there under Transcending Turbulence, which that or my name will find you. That's the name that came to me about 20 years ago, and it's just it is life. Transcending turbulence. We don't bulldoze through it. We just learn ways to rise above that stuff and see it for what it is, not what we want it to be.
Teri Pugh, thank you. You may be helping people to keep conflict from blooming in their life, but I can promise you are helping them bloom.
Thank you.
And absolutely. And you yourself are a beautiful bloom. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thanks you guys for having me.
Of course.
Thank you, Teri.
Candice and Dez and everybody for watching.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Bye-bye.